The movie opens in a lab where scientists inject a substance into a spider and place it in a box labeled NASA. We then see the box at the DC headquarters, where preparations are underway to launch a spacecraft. The mission involves sending scientists to space to conduct further experiments on the injected spiders. In the next scene, we see our protagonist, Marcy Iyer, a young scientific reporter who covers stories about aliens and other peculiar subjects for her newspaper. While on campus, she meets a so-called UFO-obsessed couple who claim to be aliens. They express discomfort about their lives here and insist they need to return to their planet, Mars. Marcy obviously doesn't believe them and starts asking several absurd questions. She also shows them a photo of a secret military facility in the desert and asks if that's where they landed. Upon viewing it closely, the husband is shocked and starts speaking in Russian. He then begins shouting in panic that he doesn't want to go back there. Sounds like these guys' real homeworld is Reddit. Confused by the couple's claims, Marcy reports them to her editor. She believes they might have something interesting to tell, which they can cover for their newspaper. However, the editor dismisses them as frauds and sends them away. He then suggests Marcy cover the news about the recently launched spacecraft and the experiments on board. However, she feels the story is unimportant, as she doesn't understand why the government would want to experiment with space. How does this character not think that's important? Defying her editor's orders, Marcy then sets out with her friends Slick and Jack to investigate the secret facility in the desert. She believes there is something significant there, especially after seeing the couple's fearful reactions and the presence of electric fences surrounding the area. Meanwhile, aboard the spacecraft, scientists are injecting something into a spider when their spaceship suddenly gets caught in a solar eclipse. Soon after, all the systems begin to fail, terrifying the astronauts. One of them switches the engine to automatic and runs for his life. The spacecraft then crashes near the facility where Marcy and her friends are investigating. This terrifies them for a bit, but then they get curious and head towards the crash site. They soon come across the corpses of the crew members, with their bodies horribly disfigured and their skin damaged by some unknown infection. They also see an astronaut with half of his face distorted, but still breathing. The trio tries their best to help him, but to no avail. Suddenly, they discover that the captain of the spacecraft is still alive, but before they can help him, government officials and scientists arrive at the site. This prompts the three friends to quickly hide in a nearby mini cargo. During this time, they witness a spider crawling out of nowhere and laying an egg on the captain's body. It then vanishes out of sight, leaving the trio puzzled. Meanwhile, Gray, the person in charge of the project, along with his assistant, Agent Murphy, enter the spacecraft. The first thing he does is kill one of the scientists, who insists that the surviving captain must be taken to the hospital, not to the lab. As all of this is happening, Murphy accidentally crushes the spider with his boots. He looks at its deformed corpse and decides to take it for research. They then blow up the spacecraft with a bomb to eliminate any evidence. In the next scene, the soldiers unknowingly load the dead bodies in the same truck where Marcy, Slick, and Jake are hiding. The entire convoy then heads to an underground lab facility. Upon arriving, the soldiers get busy unloading the bodies, while Marcy and her friends escape and hide nearby. They closely watch as the surviving captain is taken inside a lab. The three friends then sneak into a room and become shocked by what they see there. The room contains not only human samples, but also many caged aliens. They discover biohazard labels around, and a person's head preserved in a jar. Marcy realizes that if this news gets out, it will cause widespread panic. So, the trio begins taking pictures of everything. Afterward, they enter the room where the captain has been kept. We see that his face has been severely deformed, and he can barely talk. Marcy and her friends approach him and try to ask him some questions, but the captain simply whispers to them that they must stop the mother-in-law and warns them to run away from the facility. Before they can understand what that means, the captain's face suddenly explodes and a giant spider emerges from his skull. This freaks the trio out, and they quickly run away from there. Seconds later, two scientists hear the commotion and enter the room. They are equally shocked to see the giant spider crawling towards them. They try to defend themselves, but the creature suddenly attacks them by vomiting its long webs. It then goes after the male scientist and brutally kills him. Meanwhile, the female scientist loses her vision due to the spider web, so she opens the lab door and tries to flee, but the creature easily catches up to her and finishes her off. At the same time, Gray arrives with his soldiers and enters the lab where the captain was kept. When he discovers the dead bodies, he quickly deduces that it's the doing of the spider. He fears that the creature will wreak more havoc, so he orders the soldiers to capture it alive. Meanwhile, Marcy and her friends attempt to escape the facility, but end up in a maze-like, endless stare. MC Escher was an alien too. As they try to navigate through it, the giant spider emerges from the ceiling and attacks Jake. It stings his leg, but Slick punches the spider and throws it downstairs. They then manage to escape from an unlocked door and find a place to rest. During this time, they notice a room labeled Project Mill, which is Project Mother-in-Law, not what you were thinking. Remembering the captain's dying words, the trio immediately heads inside and finds various alien species preserved in jars and subjected to scientific experiments. They also learn that the scientists have been studying the growth of their test subjects under various experimental environments. To find out more information, Jake, a computer genius, hacks into one of the devices. The other two continue investigating the room and soon come across a photo of the person Marcy had met on campus earlier. This shocks her. She finally realizes that the man was telling the truth. Still probably a Redditor, though. Meanwhile, Jake successfully hacks the system, revealing a trove of classified information. They learn that the government had been experimenting on a species of giant spiders that lays eggs inside human bodies and gives birth to new offspring. The spacecraft that had been sent into space was part of this experiment, where aliens' DNA was injected into humans to serve as hosts for these spiders. They also discover that the experiment had to be conducted in an environment similar to that of the aliens, meaning it could only be done in space. That should mean that it can only be done on their homeworld, but we'll let it ride. This movie is dumb as hell. Additionally, they uncover another shocking piece of information. If this spider bites anyone, there is no chance of survival and no known cure. In other words, the mortality rate is 100%. This terrifies the group, especially since Jake has been bitten and his wound is starting to bulge and spread. Realizing that he may die soon, Jake starts to panic and grabs a dissecting instrument. He then storms out of the room to kill the venomous spider for good. But sadly, due to his sudden movement, the infection quickly spreads throughout his body. Marcy and Slick chase after him, only to find a trail of blood spread all over the stairs in the corridor. When they see a pool of blood with Jake's glasses and the dissecting instrument, they realize that he is no more. Overcome with grief and fear, Marcy and Slick decide to escape using the elevator, but without an access card, it stops midway. They then take the stairs and eventually reach a door. Just as they open it, they come face to face with the giant spider again. Terrified, the duo steps backward, only to fall into a hollow shaft below. They are now trapped in a massive spider's nest filled with endless tangles of web. The aggressive spider, spreading its alien tentacles, then crawls downwards to attack them. Marcy manages to untangle herself in the nick of time and proceeds to save her friend. However, Slick appears to be stuck real bad, and there's no way he can be freed. Realizing that he's not living up to his name and that he won't make it, he urges her to run for her life. Marcy doesn't want to leave him behind, but she doesn't have any choice either. Therefore, she reluctantly obliges and flees from there with tears in her eyes. In the next scene, we see soldiers trying to find the creature, but it is stealthily killing them one by one, just morbid hard. Amidst the chaos, Agent Murphy sees Marcy and stops her. He asks who she is and what she is doing in a restricted area, but Marcy doesn't respond to any of his questions and instead starts running away. Murphy pursues her until he catches up, and they engage in a fierce fight. During the struggle, both of them fall into a pool of sauna water. This is when the large spider appears and grabs Murphy by its claws. It is just about to finish him off, but Marcy grabs a nearby rod and stabs it in the eyes. The creature screams in pain and momentarily retreats, allowing the two to run away. But they face yet another setback when they learn that the doors are blocked with spider webs. Just then, they encounter Gray, who's armed with a weapon. Seeing Marcy, the head of the project becomes furious and points his gun at her. It turns out Marcy had written a paper about Gray's secret operation in her newspaper. This had made him so angry that he started digging up information on her. Gray now wants to silence everyone in the facility so that the spider doesn't tail them. This also means he won't hesitate to kill either Marcy or Murphy. But just as he's about to open fire, the giant spider attacks him from behind and lays an egg inside him.
This is what I always wanted! I mean, no!
The other two take advantage of the distraction and get into an elevator. As they try to leave, the spider follows them and starts attacking the elevator from beneath. Murphy then quickly presses the button to the ground floor, causing the elevator to descend rapidly. When it eventually thuds on the ground below, the bug is brutally squashed. In the aftermath, Marcy and Murphy Murphy emerge from the facility and head back to the campus to regroup and plan their next steps. However, when they arrive, they are shocked to find Gray, who had been previously attacked by the spider. There is also the dead body of the newspaper editor, who appears to have been recently murdered. All of a sudden, tentacles begin to emerge from Gray's mouth, and his body eventually explodes to show a fully adult giant spider.
How do you like me now?
Horrified by the sight, Marcy and Murphy run outside and scream for everyone to flee from the building. Panic soon spreads among the people as the hostile spider begins attacking and brutally killing them. Amidst the chaos, Murphy spots a nearby helicopter equipped with 2 rocket launchers. This movie is just a Resident Evil game. This gives him an idea, I would hope so, and he tries to attack the spider using the launcher. Unfortunately, he misses the target, and the creature starts chasing after them. Marcy and Murphy quickly board the helicopter and decide to attack it from above. They track the spider to the vicinity of the World Trade Center. What? Murphy then flies the chopper towards it, while Marcy prepares to fire. But just as she aims, the spider attacks their helicopter with its endless web. This causes Marcy to lose her balance and fall from the vehicle. Fortunately, she is tied with a rope that's connected to the helicopter's base, leading her to regain control. She then re-equips herself with the rocket launcher and fires at the spider just as it opens its mouth. This time, she successfully hits the target and kills the creature for good. The movie ends with Marcy and Murphy celebrating their victory with some loud hoots and hollers.